Okay. Testing, testing, testing. So, anyways, uh, this video is going to be about Wing Chun, and it's going to be about my perspective on a video that was on YouTube. Apparently, there was these Wing Chun practitioners, and they got together with these karate guys, and they had this competition. And they went back and forth, and long story short, there was one particular guy who was extremely aggressive in what's called in Wing Chun with his chain punching, which is basically one punch comes continuously after the other, one punch over the top of the other. And there was a guy, he got on YouTube and he commented that that was the best Wing Chun that he had ever seen, and that he's never seen another guy, do as well, or whatever he was saying. He changed a lot of what he was saying. He edited a lot of his videos, or actually he edited a lot of his comments. I don't think he's actually posted a video. But anyways, long story short, we got into this big argument about why we disagreed on the tactics and the strategies that the Wing Chun guy was using. Why we disagreed about whether or not what he was doing was appropriate, or whether or not what he was doing was effective. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate the techniques or demonstrate what I think his flaws were in this video. I'm going to have somebody record me right now. I don't have that. I'm alone. But I will talk about what I thought was wrong with the video, what I thought was wrong with what he was actually doing. Um, for one, it's I think it's just a general rule. One of the things that I worry about as a martial artist is, irregardless of what style I'm practicing or who I'm practicing with, I always worry about my fingers getting jammed. One thing I've noticed that's become very popularized with Wing Chun, and I don't know where it comes from, if it's a YouTube thing or if it's something that's been popularized by the movies. I notice a lot of guys, they extend the forward arm. They extend the forward arm on their center line. Okay, that's fine. And then they place the hand, like so, um, the opposite hand with the elbow like so, so that when they're coming over the top, they can continue on with their chain punching. Well, somehow, this arm placement has become like the standard stance of Wing Chun fighters on YouTube. Now, the issue that I have with that, when I first started studying Wing Chun, and when I studied under the Sifu that I studied under, one of the things that he brought up, one of the first things I asked him was, I said, you know, what type of stance does Wing Chun have? And the first thing he told me is, he said there's no real definite stance. One of the things that people, I think, don't always quite understand about Wing Chun is that Wing Chun is not always a definite set or a definite rule or a definite set of rules of techniques that you have to do certain things a certain way all the time. Um, what I learned about Wing Chun is, Wing Chun is actually more strategy based than it is actually physically or physical technique based. Wing Chun is more so a strategy that's based on the idea of protecting your center line and having your defense and your offense along with your center line. And for those who don't know what your center line is the imaginary line that would divide your body into two asymmetrical halves. And the center line is very important in Wing Chun practice, both for your developing your offense as well as developing your defense. So from what I understand and from what I was taught about Wing Chun is that there's not always a definite way that you have to do things, or it's not always a certain way that you have to do things, but there's a strategy that you should adhere to. Now, yes, of course, Wing Chun has its preference for its physical techniques. That's what separates it from other martial arts, but more important in Wing Chun is a strategy. Now, getting back to the stance, the one thing that I was taught about the stance, especially when you're standing with the forward arm extended and the opposite hand, rested around the elbow of the forward arm that's extended, one thing that I see that I have a problem with is a lot of guys, for whatever reason, they tend to extend their fingers forward. They point their fingers forward towards their opponent just like this. And to me, I was taught really not to do that. For one thing I noticed is that when they do point their fingers forward like this, a lot of times they kind of have their fingers fluctuated. And I guess the idea behind that is that what they're trying to do is they're trying to activate muscles that are in their forearm and keep a little bit of tension in their forearm and in their fingers while having it extended forward at the same time. Well, see, the thing about that is that when I was taught, whenever I was taught to utilize that stance, I was taught to keep the fingers slightly together but relaxed, and I was taught to keep the fingers at a slight upwards angle. And the reason I was taught to do that is because if you have your fingers facing forward, you have your fingers extended and slightly separated, then if your opponent were to rush you and they were to rush forward, then there's a good chance that your fingers could get jammed. There's a good chance that your fingers could get caught on clothing. So that's why I was taught it was important to keep your fingers together and keep your fingers slightly up at an upward angle, not just pointed forward with the fingers just all extended out, all crazy. That's something I see a lot of Wing Chun practitioners doing on YouTube. They just have these fingers just extended forward. And to me, my first instinct would be, to punch a finger, like rush a finger, jam a finger, grab a finger. In Kung Fu, there's a lot of finger grabbing. That was something also that my Sifu brought up. He says you never want to have your fingers just separated and extended forward towards your opponent because, in Kung Fu, people grab fingers. In Kung Fu, people eye gouge. Speaking of your center line, the reason why your center line is important in Wing Chun is because if you had a line separating your body into two asymmetrical halves, along that line, in terms of offense in Wing Chun, you have your eyeballs. Also along that line, you have your nose. You have your throat going down. You have your sternum, your lower stomach, as well as your genitals. A lot of weak points on your body are along that center line. And Wing Chun guys, they can target anything from utilizing that center line. They can target anything from your eyes to your nose to your throat, to your sternum, to your lower stomach, down to your genitals. And so, Kung Fu includes a lot of attacks like that on weak parts of the body. It includes a lot of, grabbing, finger grabbing, a lot of wrist grabbing. That was one of the reasons for, if you notice a lot of times in Wing Chun formation, when they stick their hand forward, they pop their wrist and turn their wrist. The reason for that technique is it's actually utilized to escape your hand from being grabbed by your opponent. And you escape by making that wrist movement, and you can continue to attack your opponent after you make that escape. But I was taught by my Sifu, you never have your hand just fully forward, your arm all the way forward extended, with your fingers spread out and your fingers extended, because they can grab your fingers and they can snap them, and you won't be able to use that hand. It could be over like that. They don't even have to grab your fingers. Like I said, if you got your fingers extended forward like this, they could just rush your fingers, or they could rush you and in the process run into your fingers, and your fingers could get jammed, or they could throw an attack that might hurt your fingers, and it could just be over with. So I was always taught, if I did have this forward arm extended, to have these fingers together with a little bit of pressure, not too much, and to have them slightly up at an upwards angle. Now I'll demonstrate this in a later video later on, but right now I'm just talking through it. Another issue I had with the video and the arm extension is that the arm is fully extended. And in Wing Chun, a lot of times, not only is the punch generated from the alignment of your joints, but the punch is also generated from the elbows, especially when you're talking about chain punches in close. And if you got that forward arm extended all the way to the point where the elbow is almost locked out, then if you wanted to utilize that forward arm for an attack or a quick to start off your chain punch, you can't do that because the arm is already almost fully extended. There's not enough bend in that arm to generate a punch off that front arm if you wanted to attack off that front arm. And that front arm is what's closest to your opponent. You know, another concept in Wing Chun is about getting straight to the point. It's about utilizing the shortest distance between you and your opponent. And a lot of times that leading arm is the shortest distance. And a lot of times that leading arm is already invaded your opponent's space and they don't even realize it because they think that arm is just out there for show, or they just think it's out there for blocking or deflecting, which is one of the things that it is out there for. But you could also punch off that leading arm. But you can only attack off that leading arm if you allow enough bend in that leading arm for you to attack off of it. But what a lot of Wing Chun guys are doing, or what a lot of Wing Chun guys on YouTube are doing, is they're keeping this arm, that forward arm, just extended all the way straight. You know, the elbow is locked out, and because that elbow is locked out, you know, they can't get any. They don't have enough bend in that elbow to push off an attack if they had that arm in a space where it could have an opening. And so that was one of the issues, one of the gripes that, you know, I had with what the guy was doing. Also, another gripe that I had was that he didn't really get off of, when you're talking about that center line in terms of Wing Chun, you're talking about defense and offense. He stayed on his opponent's line of attack. He kept his center line exposed. He never really got off that center line. And I guess maybe he felt like because he was on his way in attacking and he was dominating the action by continuously chain punching, maybe he felt like he didn't need to protect his own center line by staying off of his opponent's line of attack, or his opponent's center line that his opponent could use to attack him. And what I mean when I say that is that he was coming straight forward with his center line exposed. A lot of times when he was coming in, he wasn't picking angles. One thing I was taught by my Sifu is that when you come in and you initiate an attack, a lot of times you want to get off of the guy's center line and you want to attack in from an angle because you don't want to expose your center line as you're attacking to go for his. So you want to attack his center line from an angle, not a direct on square angle. That's one of the things the guy was doing. The other thing the guy was doing was his foot placement. He was standing straight up. His knees were locked. And this allows, I mean, it doesn't matter what martial art you take, or it doesn't matter what sport you participate in. Everybody knows when you're standing straight up, you're easily knocked over. You know, his knees were locked. So not only was his forward extended arm locked, and he couldn't generate an attack off that forward extended arm, all he could do was kind of parry with it. His knees were locked. So his forward extending arm, elbow was locked, and his knees were locked. He was standing straight up. That wasn't something that I was taught to do in Wing Chun. And so those were, you know, my gripes with the video. And that's why, you know, I made the commentary that I did. You know, I apologize if I came across too harsh. I apologize if, you know, I really came across, you know, as an asshole, you know, arguing with that guy over the internet. But that was my reasoning. And that's all I was simply trying to explain to the guy, is that, you know, even though he was aggressive and he won the fight through his aggression, he made a lot of mistakes, at least from, you know, a Wing Chun practitioner's point of view. And so that's all I was trying to convey. This video is just talking through it, and I'm about 15 minutes into running my mouth on this video, you know. But this video is just talking through it. In the next video that I post, I'll actually demonstrate why I felt like what he was doing was inappropriate. So that's all. Thank you for viewing. Feel free to leave me your commentary, you know, whether you agree with me or whether you disagree with me. Like I said, Wing Chun, from what I was taught, what I understand, Wing Chun is more strategy based than anything. Yes, you have your physical element to Wing Chun, but from what I understand is you have techniques that you learn in Wing Chun. You have three main forms, and then you have some forms that you learn on the wooden dummy. Um, and from there, you put your combinations and you put your strategies together the way you feel is necessary to be applicable for the situation. Just like boxing. In boxing, you only have so many punches and you only have so many movements, so many paris. It's not, deeply technical. You know what I mean? But the strategy behind boxing is what makes it a science. And that's the way Wing Chun is. Wing Chun is based off of taking the most practical moves from, traditional kung fu, and it's about putting it together in a strategy that's practical and it works. And so, if you agree with that, if you disagree with that, feel free to leave your comments below. I'm not gonna spend all my time arguing about, this, that, and this, who has what credentials. I'm not doing that anymore because Wing Chun is one of those martial arts that has so much diversity. Like I said, just based on the strategy alone, that everybody's always going to have a different opinion about it. But I'd like to hear your comments, and thank you for taking the time to view this video. And like I said, later on, I'll post a video actually demonstrating what I feel like is wrong with what I saw in the video and what I'm seeing a lot of on YouTube in terms of Wing Chun. So thank you, and that's all.